Josh Brown, the most obvious thing in the world has happened again.
Again, Scott, why does no one learn?
They don't learn to the tune of multiple hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever it'll be by the end of all this stuff in a smouldering wreck, which is to say that these sales have finally come in for the digital side of video games across the last few weeks, as reported by GamesIndustry.biz. They do report a combination of physical and digital sales, and Suicide Squad sadly only reached the 12th highest selling game of the month. It was behind Helldivers 2, it was behind GTA 5, Modern Warfare 3, even Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, even though that game only launched in the last couple of days of the month itself. But the fact that Suicide Squad has come in so low as it brings about a whole wider question as to what the hell's going to happen going forward. Obviously there's the specific stuff about the likes of Rocksteady, but also Warner Brothers, their whole wider mandate in regards to doubling down on live services and the state of the industry overall. To quote from the Games Industry article, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's opening 5 weeks were 33% lower than Gotham Knights in 2022 and 61% lower than what Guardians of the Galaxy managed in 2021. Two superior games, Josh Brown.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I keep saying
still undersold.
The best thing about Suicide Squad is that it makes me appreciate Gotham Knights so much more. I was too hard on that game.
Yeah.
If I knew it could have been much worse.
I was a Gotham Knights truther, I'm just saying.
You actually were, you know. I had a lot
What's
of problems
that thing
with
with
that. Different thing. That's the Wolf of Wall Street thing.
Yeah. Doesn't he say something? Like
I don't know if that's going to be related to Gotham Knights in any way.
Hey? Yeah.
What was the point of this? The sales. Yes. As you said, you know, Gotham Knights, something I've come to appreciate much more, and Guardians of the Galaxy, a genuinely great game. To see it come in so much below those titles, not necessarily surprising because we had the early sales data and we could just look at the all-time and current peak players on something like, you know, Steam to kind of get a gauge of who's actually still playing this game. But this sucks for two reasons, I think. One, it sucks because WB is going to continue to take the wrong lessons from this sales data, I think. They're going to look at Gotham Knights underperforming. They're going to look at Suicide Squad underperforming, even though for some reason they don't class Suicide Squad as a live service, even though it is kind of built around this live service structure. And I think they're going to look at those two games and go, this is too risky. We're never going to make AAA games again. We're going to focus on live services and free-to-play mobile games like they've already stated. And it contributes to that narrative for them, even though it shouldn't, because Suicide Squad is a live service game and it's sold under the multiplayer but still single player focused Gotham Knights and the single player focused Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm like, it invalidates your point, but you're not going to recognize that and you're going to push forward anyway.
There's a stratospheric misunderstanding of their own properties. I remember when David Zaslav said that they hadn't done anything with the Harry Potter IP, but Hogwarts Legacy just came out that year. It's like, even then, also in the same regard to what you just said, you have multiple single player experiences that are being received very well across the board, including something like Hogwarts Legacy from them. They even see the sales spike for that, but they go, no, we should do more like Suicide Squad. But if it does come down to a misunderstanding of just how they view that game, and they just look at Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League and don't see it as a live service game or don't see the live service components in that conversation, then maybe they can convince themselves that this isn't a harbinger of what's going to happen going forward. There are obviously many other aspects to the game as to why it didn't do very well, like the whole sort of tagging it on to the end of Arkham Knight, treating major plot points like random throwaway callbacks is part of it. But I just don't. At this point, the amount of mistakes that Warner Brothers have made in quick succession, and now when they're staring these sales data numbers in the face, I just wonder, like, what's it going to take for them to listen, to realize that this is not the path you're supposed to be on? How many more times? How much more do they need to see?
We briefly mentioned this when we did our last big video on Warner Brothers, but I think it bears repeating and bears stressing here specifically. When those executives talk about pushing towards live service games, push towards free-to-play games and mobile games, I can only imagine that they're viewing what they define those genres as much cheaper, as much less resource intensive, and not a big game like Suicide Squad. I think that is the core of why they're making these distinctions, because we as gamers can look at Suicide Squad and point towards the live service elements, look towards the DLC roadmap, look towards the repetitive mission structure.
13 Brainiacs.
Yeah, and compare it to Anthem quite easily, another live service disaster. But I think they're looking at it and going, no, that's just a AAA game. That's just a AAA game that has some elements some monetizable elements. I think to them,
Mm-hmm.
to these boneheaded executives, to them, like, live services are like Clash of Clans on mobile or Facebook games or, you know, free-to-play games that don't take this amount of time and all of those resources, and that makes me even more worried about the company than I already am producing games like Suicide Squad, because if that's like too much of a risk for them, what the hell are we going to get that isn't?
I think you'll get a whole bunch of ostensibly tech demos that have a bit more money put behind them. I mean, they've already said about doubling down on the IPs that they own. They cited Game of Thrones, Mortal Kombat, as things that they want to do more mobile game releases within, you know, including all the DC stuff, etc. So I wonder if there will just be a period of mobile first stuff, which I feel like we tried that 10 years ago and it bottomed out. There was a whole thing about how the mobile gaming experience was the future of the industry, and it absolutely was not. EA themselves then thought that the future of the industry was away from single player stuff. Again, they were wrong. This is just another one of those conversations about the future of the industry is in live services. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
We've proven that wrong multiple times, whether it be Anthem, Avengers, whatever. And right now, Suicide Squad, even though, like I said, there are more factors to why that game has bombed and not been received very well as to just the overall monetization structure. The complete counterpoint will be a Helldivers 2. Something that is absolutely flying and is a live service model, but at least it respects your time.
Yeah.
And it feels good to play, which would be another major thing. It's worth throwing in just that, you know, as much as Warner Brothers, just because I'm an AEW guy.
Go on.
On the wrestling side, they've got a lot more AEW mobile games than they do console games, which is only like a factor of like 2 or 3. But the mobile AEW games are terrible, like just really threadbare, badly animated clickers that just feel designed to hoover up your time and money. I can't say that much different about Fight Forever either, but the way that stuff came together feels WB mandated on the mobile side.
I mean,
and I wonder if that's just testament to how things are going to be.
Yeah, they're a fascinating company, hence why we've done so many videos and podcasts on them. But, you know, you mentioned there that, you know, they're making the same mistakes that companies have already made, and I think that is a real important sort of issue with the company as well. Like, the industry, the gaming industry, has already learnt all the mistakes that Warner Brothers are repeating. To me, it feels like they're maybe even a decade behind the competition, and I do wonder how much of that comes from the influence from other departments within Warner Brothers. It just doesn't feel like a company ran by people in the gaming industry, and you know how much we rag on executives in the gaming industry now anyway for their business practices and their ideas, but these guys feel like a step behind even them, like even slower on the uptake than them, and that just makes me think, when is the next time we're going to see like a real quality WB product? When are we going to have faith in a studio or a franchise or even a big release? Because they're getting to the point, for me personally, where Ubisoft was a few years ago, where a new Ubisoft game comes out and you just think, I know what this is going to be, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, you can have a huge franchise like Assassin's Creed that still does numbers, but like for a good long while, it was like, what are you doing as a company? You're rebooting Ghost Recon as a live service battle royale game, then cancelling it. You're not capitalizing on the franchises that people love, and you're spewing out more or less the same thing based on the same formula without taking any risks, and it becomes a studio you can easily ignore. And I don't want WB to be a studio you can easily ignore. They've got too many talented developers, they've got too many great franchises, and they have so much potential, but they refuse to capitalize on any of it.
Yeah, and I want to touch on, because it's not, the thing is, it needs to be made abundantly clear that, like, I love Rocksteady. We've talked loads about Rocksteady over the years. Some of the best games ever made, some of the most talented pools of people you'd ever find in the industry that sadly over the years were then attached to something that has inevitably bombed over time. They, to me, are emblematic of the core of the question of what this is going forward. Because you saw it over on the Sony side as well. There was all the fallout of what happened with Sony's overall push towards live services, and you know, the Last of Us multiplayer game is ostensibly being cancelled, and things like that, where it's like you try and take talented, story-driven people, passionate people down a certain road, and you try and make them make a multiplayer, and you can see the executive top-down think of, well, that's where the money is, just do one of them, and it never works. And like I said, there's various factors to Suicide Squad, but that was Rocksteady doing a one of them and trying to make it work. You saw it with Anthem, BioWare doing a one of them, came out very badly. And I'm so curious what the hell happens at Rocksteady. Like, I hope that they are able to survive this, do something more story focused again. I feel like they're up against this behemoth that won't even let them pass, kind of thing.
mean, like, again, going broader with the company, this is a company that doesn't care if you have completed a movie for them.
Yeah.
They will cancel that. They will make sure nobody ever sees it so they can get a tax write-off for it. You know what I mean? They don't... It's a big claim. It's a big claim, but judging on the moves they made over the past few years, I don't believe they care about creatives. I don't believe they care about artistry. I think they care about money above all else, and they don't even understand necessarily how to make that. And when it comes to like these games and these studios, more importantly, like you say, like when I'm ragging on WB, I'm ragging on WB at this level. Like Rocksteady, even I keep saying, man, I play Suicide Squad, and there's so much about that game I didn't like. But there's so much quality in there that you could have isolated and made a great game out of. There's so much talent in there. And I think this is an issue for the industry, not just in terms of creativity, but in terms of the expertise and the developers that you're losing. Because even if Rocksteady doesn't shut down, and I really hope it doesn't, there's obviously going to be a lot of talented people left there. But we've seen time and time again, like you said, when the publisher says, please make us a live service, to a team that might not necessarily want to do it or doesn't have the history with them, you see an exodus of talent. Like, I look towards the report that we got on Redfall and Arcane Studios, like the big sources working on that game just kind of claimed like a bunch of the staff wasn't happy working on a multiplayer game. They didn't want to do that, and that led to high profile people from the studio leaving. It led to a lot of people who had been there for, a decade, maybe even longer, jumping ship. And then it's like, well, if you're losing those key creatives in these positions, like, what can the studio even do? It's the studio that you love in name only. And again, that's not to do the disservice to the people who remain at these studios. They are obviously, very talented, but that's going to impact their overall identity, their overall quality. If you push out the people who have been instrumental in making a lot of those games that made these developers famous and popular and respected in the first place. That was long-winded.
No, and that's very well put. I think the ultimate point with Rocksteady specifically is that their founders left in the wake of Suicide Squad. Like, you have to imagine that it was extremely hard getting that over the finish line and then just having to vacate. Same thing happened with BioWare. The doctors who formed that studio left. Like, you see that across the board. Because it's not why they got into the industry in the first place, and all of a sudden your parent company wants something different from you, but which is anathema to why they purchased you in the first place. It's just things like that are always all over the place. But yeah, it seems like a bit of a dark time over at Warner Brothers right now, and now that the sales figures are screaming at them that this is not the way forward, we'll see which lessons they actually learn from them.